The Echo Chamber, brought to you by The Holmes Report and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers. Sponsored by the Bullet Group, putting you in tomorrow's conversations today.
Hello and welcome to the Echo Chamber. I'm Diana Marszalek. I'm senior reporter with the Holmes Report, and I'm here today with Jamie McLaughlin. Jamie is president and founder of Capstone Hill Search, here to talk about talent. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Good. So where are we at with talent? Is it a buyer's market, a seller's market?
Yeah, it's definitely a seller's market. It's very much a candidate-driven place at the moment. It's probably, I've been doing this 13 years, and I'm internationally, and it's obviously the different markets, there's different trends. But if we talk about the US, I've never seen a market like it where the sort of the fight for talent is just unbelievable, and that's of course is driving up price and expectation and job titles, and it's incredible, and not in necessarily a positive way. I mean, maybe for the candidates, but even then, it's creating a level of competitiveness that I haven't seen before.
But what's driving that? Is it the need for new skills? Is it expansion of the industry? Is it?
Yeah, I think there's various. I mean, on a macro level, we're pretty much at 100% employment at the moment, and markets continue to rise, and so as a result, generally salaries are very high. But I also think if we're talking on a more micro sense with PR and communications, we're seeing a lot of new businesses and industries entering the market, competing for the same clients and for the same RFPs, and as a result, it's salaries are going up that way as well. If to really simplify it, if management consultancies are coming into the market, they pay a lot more traditionally than PR agencies do. So I'm oversimplifying. I often do, but that's one big catalyst for it, I think, as well.
You're saying these other sort of entities that weren't in communications go.
Yeah, absolutely. And traditionally, even if you just look at advertising agencies, marketing agencies, again, maybe they did pay more, and now they're competing for the same jobs and roles and briefs. So it's definitely driving up price that way as well.
Well, how loyal is PR talent? I mean, would they jump ship? Would they go to these other agencies?
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking at a master's class at Columbia University a few weeks ago, and they asked me a similar question, and I said to they asked about the different factors and different businesses moving into similar spaces, and I said from their point of view it should be quite exciting and eye-opening, because whilst it might change who they thought might be paying them, it gives them more options, and it gives it gives a broader opportunities for them. So I don't think someone, if we use those graduates as an example, I don't think they really care who is paying them or who their boss is or what business is under them, as long as they're doing the work that they want to be doing, which is integrated communications, which is being creative, which is reputation management, corporate comms, whatever it is. So unfortunately, I don't think there's a huge amount of loyalty to the traditional PR model, but that goes for the tradition, someone who was traditionally in advertising or someone who was traditionally in public affairs. I think I don't think they're as long as they're doing the work that they want to do. I don't think they're necessarily loyal, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing either, really.
Right. So there's some purists out there.
Yeah, absolutely, and we could definitely talk about that. But it's I think So of course, people still want to do PR. There's no doubt about that. But it's just it can be as part of a different team or as a part in a different environment, I think.
So the job market's hot, but where does this leave the traditional PR agencies?
the traditional PR agency. I mean, there's some great
or legacy PR agency. I guess is more
I think they. There's always going to be a need for. Well, it depends how you define traditional PR, I suppose. But there's always going to be a need for public relations. But there's also there's increased competition for as we said, for that. So I think that we are certainly seeing some traditional PR agencies be left behind, and then conversely, traditional PR persons being left behind to an extent. But there's some wonderful examples of agencies that are very much at the sort of coalface of that, and it's not it's an overused word, but that sort of integrated marketing communications as well. I mean, I was at an agency last week who were founded by very traditional PR people, and they're in the middle of doing an advert for Budweiser for the Super Bowl. I mean, that's not a traditional PR agency. So there will be people left behind and businesses left behind, but it's also for the ones that are getting it right, it's extremely exciting for them and for the industry, I think.
You mentioned the people being left behind.
Yes.
So we're talking about traditionalists. I imagine
I'm
people who grew up. No, I'm not asking for names. We all know who they know. What do you do? I mean, they come to you if these people want to work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what do these people do? Are you seeing a lot of them, and what do they do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, PR is a very broad term. Are we talking? Would you say we sort of traditional media relations people?
Yeah. Old school,
Yeah. I mean, there is always there will continue to be a business or a business need for media relations, and I'm wholeheartedly. I still read the New York Times physically, mainly at the weekends. It's delivered, but so there's always going to be a need for that, and a lot of businesses, hold that in high esteem, and so they should. So there is a need, but it's dwindling, and it's probably flattened out a little bit, but it definitely dropped off. So they're still finding work, but they either need to re-collaborate, or they're probably doing and re-skill up, or they're probably doing a lot less. I would say so.
Yeah. What kind of expectations are you seeing on both sides? So if this is the hot market, are talent looking for the ultimate end-all be-all high-paying job, and what are agencies looking for in the person that does it all, or everything's still realistic? Yeah, I mean there's certainly that. There is that from a candidate point of view, is an expectation that they might have their own sort of skill set themselves, but they want to be part of an organisation that does everything, and not everyone does that. I think a lot of if you look at most businesses' websites, they say they do everything. Most firms' websites, they say they do everything, but that's not always the case, and I think that goes for, when just before I came to see you, took a job brief earlier, and the things they listed, if we got 6 out of the 10, I think they would be very, very lucky. So there is that sort of there's an expectation, but also a realization that candidates can't cover every single of those bases, or a role or an agency can't cover every single one of those bases as well, I think. So what should talent candidates be equipping themselves with? What kind of skills should they have? Yeah, I think I always think that you should have a multitude of interests and skill sets, but a focus is always really, really helpful, I think, because if you spread yourselves too thin, then you're not really an expert in anything, and it's hard to sort of define that. That goes for when you look at someone's resume, and if it's just a long list of things that they've done, or can do, then I don't think that is ideal. So I definitely think it's sort of the PR person of the future or today has can turn their hand to video production, and can turn their hand to social media monitoring. But if they're a trusted advisor as well, I think that or have a particular focus in one area, I think that's important. Looking forward, I think I mentioned a couple of things there, but there is a whole host of new skills and technologies that are coming into play, whether that be AR or VR or AI or any other acronym I can think. That that's certainly what people are learning in college at the moment, and skills that are going to be needed. But PR isn't just about technologies or sort of the newest trend. Also, there is you're a trusted advisor, you C-suite whisperer,
crisis and corporate communications expert. So there's always going to be that personable personality side of it. That can the CEO trust you, and when needed. So I think that there's a whole host of skills you can learn, but experience in those sort of areas, being that trusted advisor, will always be important and can't be replaced, I don't think so.
Yeah, and that's something that's sort of intuitive. That's not necessarily that comes with you out of college. So do you think there's any fear of losing in all the technology being, infused into the industry, into the education, into the multi-skills and the multimedia? Is there any danger of sort of losing the industry, losing those people, the people that are the creative force, that are maybe the advising force?
It's a good question.
Or cerebral person.
I was speaking at Georgetown with the Institute.
You're speaking everywhere. Columbia, Georgetown, where else?
I speak at Holmes Report stuff, but
no, I kicked you out.
No, I got dropped off the shortlist. But it was, it was the Institute of Public Relations, and we were talking about. The question was, will PRs be replaced by machines? And it was a little bit of a facetious question, but there is some sort of truth in that a little bit. And I mean, my short answer was, I don't think people will be or PRs will be replaced by machines, but they might be replaced by a person that's better at using machines or technology. Okay. I definitely think there's that aspect of it where it's big data analytics and insights and stuff like that. But no, that's for me. That's what I take comfort in from a PR and comms, is because there is it's about the person, it's about the subtle nuances, it's about the advisory side of it. That a machine isn't, or an algorithm isn't going to be able to do that. And I think out of so many things, I think that is you want a human being on the other end of the phone or sat next to you, advising you on what they think. And PR's often suffered from being a little bit intangible, versus marketing, which is here's this is how much sales we did as a result of the marketing. PR has always been a little bit, suffered from not having as much, as being as tangible. But if there's true science behind PR at the input and output stage, then it can really show how effective it is. And also you can use PR based on facts and figures as well. So from my point of view, I think that there's some real positives to take on that. But it's really up to PR and comms to be at the forefront of that and making sure they own that, that side of it as well, not letting other businesses do that, which is kind of where, that's the fear that you have, I think, a little bit. So.
Are they taking ownership of it? Are you seeing PR taking ownership?
Again, some businesses and some firms are doing it spectacularly. Others, no. That if we're talking about the management consultancies and the accountancy firms coming in, they're very good at using data and analytics.
I'm sure.
That's kind of how they made their money. So, no, I think. I think we could be a lot better at it. Yeah, but it's a topic that is spoke at. The Holmes Report events, and it was spoke at length at the event in San Francisco, which was called the
Into Summit.
Yeah, Into Summit, which was fantastic.
You're supposed to put me on the spot.
I know, sorry. So from that, so I think we're definitely having that conversation, and I said there's some wonderful examples of that, but I do think we could be a lot better at it. Yeah.
I imagine I picture what the candidates that come to you, what people are looking for, and it's almost like this left brain, right brain sort of division that you're trying to marry in a way, or how there's so many elements of how an agency, I imagine, works internally to sort of marry that. And that you got a hard job because you got to find not just the right candidate, but there's a whole greater ecosystem in an agency.
Yes,
that makes it work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of similar to PR. Recruiting in it, of course, it's not. Again, it's often the things that we're looking for aren't on the resume, or aren't necessarily when we email. You can just list the things. It's about that's why we have to meet candidates and get references and get an understanding of them, because it's not something that's always on a piece of paper that can tell you exactly how good someone is in that. And that's what, again, when we're introducing them to agencies or in-house comms teams, it's finding that balance. Definitely.
So you've been doing this for 13 years. How has the hiring process changed?
Well,
I mean, everything's changed, right?
Yeah.
So people say you can't send out resumes anymore. You can't
Sure.
do, you people just look for buzzwords, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, that's again. There's definitely. Yeah, there's the automation, of course, which a lot of very large organisations are bringing in. From a PR agency point of view, that's not something that has come into play as yet, or not to my knowledge anyway. So again, I think because PR isn't, it's not like forgive me if any engineers are listening, but they're not. But
they're not,
if you're looking for an engineer, it's what school do they go to? Where do they learn? Where do they intern? What businesses have they worked for, et cetera, et cetera. In PR is you got to get that person face to face before you make any decisions in terms of, can they do the job? Do you trust them? What's their drive, ambition? How do they react under pressure? How are they going to react in a pitch? Can they manage people? Can they upsell, downsell? All those sort of things. So again, I think a lot of the hiring process has stayed quite similar, to be honest, in the 14 years that I've been doing things. So how we find candidates is different. We're not using fax machines or and even cold calling is very rare now. It's with online LinkedIn and these sort of things that's definitely changed, but it hasn't changed a whole lot. I think again because of the world that we live in, and also because of the size of the businesses that we're often dealing with. It's if we're looking on the agency side, yes. Yes, on the in-house front, we work with, of course, we work with Fortune 500 businesses, and they absolutely use automation in terms of the hiring process. However, one of the biggest issues I have when I speak to CMOs or CCOs is they're like, I don't want to use our in-house recruitment team because they're very used to doing an automated and very structured process, whereas I'm looking for an individual person. So often they're trying to bypass that, if anything, really.
I believe it doesn't necessarily work, that automation doesn't always work in a PR industry, because a lot of what you're looking for is such a subjective...
Yeah, it's highly subjective, yeah, and it's not on a piece of paper, and it's all about drive, personality, ambition, these sort of things.
What are the skills that companies are looking for or agencies that are looking for that are hard to find?
I think it, and you touched on a point a little bit there. I think it's often it's pretty easy to find people with the individual skills that they're looking for. It's the combination of them is often as that we find, and and you talked about that left brain, right brain. I think that rings very, very true. Often, if someone is super technical and very strong on the analytics and data side of it, they can find it a lot harder to then speak to layman's about what these findings mean and distill that sort of complicated information, whether that's to the client, whether that's to other members of the team, whether that's to journalists or what have you. So I think it's finding people with a skill is easy. It's often when the combination is that's where it gets very, very tricky. I think.
Could understand that. We talked about loyalty to the business, but what about loyalty to employers?
Yes.
Talents. Are they sticking it out with an employer? Are the employers encouraging them to do so?
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone sets out to leave a job within 6 months or 18 months or anything. I think I think naturally as humans we want to stay somewhere and grow and develop and learn. And it's comforting to be places for a longer period of time. But there's definitely. Speaking as I'm doing inverted commas, which isn't very good for podcasting, but as a European, there is some striking differences in loyalty here, and I think that's a result of there's a much more hire and fire culture in the US. That's arguably why US business is so successful, because they make a lot more changes and can cut and hire much quicker. But I do think that creates a culture of people always thinking about the next job, because they have a notice period of 0 to 2 weeks, whereas in the UK, it's 1 to 3 months, and it's probably the average is 3. And in France, you effectively can't fire someone. So so it makes it.
I was talking to somebody in journalism to Italy. He was saying the same
Italy's
thing.
The same,
He's like, they can't get rid of me. He's been with the same paper for 30 years or whatever it is.
Exactly.
It doesn't happen like that.
No,
now.
exactly. So I definitely think as I said, I don't think anyone sets out to leave their job, but definitely it's always in the back of the mind.
A little more defensive.
Yeah, because the market can move so quickly.
Or offensive, I guess that would be.
Yet
there's a lot of country hopping in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that's why when we started the business, that was we saw that, and that's why we're in 3 continents ourselves and work across all the major hubs. And a great thing about a difference between a communication advisor, that skill's transferable. Yes, you have to learn the cultures and traditions of a business and a country or a region, but in essence, that innate skill set that you have is highly transferable. Traditional media relations, of course, is very different, but traditional media relations has changed greatly as well, and so definitely a lot of job hopping, particularly at the senior level, where it's quite easy to create a case for moving people around. So and that's that makes it exciting for a lot of people. I think you can port that communications around, whereas if you're a lawyer or again, you can't even move states. Right. Yeah, so it's one of the great things about communications. It's highly portable. So.
And you're expanding too in the States. You have 2 new offices,
yes,
correct?
In Chicago and Los Angeles.
Okay.
DC would probably be next. It's a very big market for us as well. Mm-hmm. We just try and be where you expect to find communications people, really. So
the big hubs, and it is happening there, right? It's not all in New York.
No.
What are the lively markets you're saying? I mean, obviously LA and Chicago.
LA and Chicago, fantastic. DC remains very, very strong. Austin has been it's obviously it's well positioned. It's highly creative. A lot of investment, particularly in technology and fintech. So that seems to be a big growth market for us at the moment. A lot of people. Denver, it seems to be a highly desirable place to live, and as a result, a lot of businesses setting up there, and then of course the agencies move there as well. So that seems to be a hot growth market for us as well. So.
Well, as an LA native, I note your move to LA because most of the agencies I've been dealing with are in the Bay Area, yes. Seattle.
Yeah.
What is it about LA? Why aren't people moving to LA?
I think. Well,
you are.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We deliberately went for LA because we are seeing movement south from San Francisco, and principally because of the insane cost of living, and then agencies. As a result, salary levels are just, if we think New York's expensive, salary levels are just out of control in San Francisco. Right. It's so, because it's so focused in the technology world as well. It's just PR agencies in particular. It's a real horror show out there because even if you get that. You talk about loyalty as well. Even if you get that ideal candidate, they're there with you for a year, and then Facebook or Google, offer them 10 grand more and stock and unlimited days off and the gym and the canteen and all this sort of thing, and and they move on. So it's a brutal market, the San Francisco market. I think there has to be a correction at some point. Whether it's housing, whether it's salaries, but it's very, very tough market. So that's what we put a bit of a marker in the ground and said we're going to be in Los Angeles, and it's very easy to be back and forth from the two. Time will tell if how good a move it was, but so far going really, really well, and I envisage quite a bit of talent moving that way as well. So.
I believe it. You also work with Inhouse.
Yes.
So tell me about that. There is a lot of development of the in-house corporate functions, right? They're building them out, and what does that mean both internally and what does it mean for the agencies? Yeah.
Again, from an individual point of view, that it shouldn't really affect the sort of practitioner really, because it's just who you end up working for, and often it's the sort of plum in-house job is seen as the Holy Grail, whether that is the case in reality, I'm not so sure. So a lot of PR agency people are always looking in-house. So from a practitioner point of view, I think it can be seen as a positive.
Is that because it's the more limited? Not, I don't want to say limited, but it's the 9 to 5.
Yeah, well, that's the. I mean,
that's how it is with lawyers. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm sure and again, speaking from my wife, who works in communications, and she worked at agency and moved house, and she worked way harder when she moved in-house. So I'm not sure, as I said, it's the Holy Grail, but the reality is not always the same. But I think there is that, but often it's, as an agency, you work for 5 or 6 different clients at one time, you're skimming the surface. So it's really getting, your meat into something, getting an understanding, and understanding how businesses work as well and stuff. So I completely understand it, and often it's a great move. So we're definitely seeing that in housing, and I get why businesses do it as well, because you have people that are just living and breathing your brand and have a great understanding of how these things work, and hopefully are loyal, and it's their sole focus. So I get why they do that. But the event that we did with Corey from Google a few weeks ago, he spoke about in-housing, and it's something he's very, he likes.
You're talking about the Homes Report event that we had.
Yeah. For the Innovator.
25.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And he spoke about that, but he also, and I completely agree with him, and he's a much cleverer guy than I am, but he said, he will never fully in-house because you need separate opinions, and if you need different eyes and ears, and you need to know what's going on out there. You can't just always be talking inwardly, I think. So I can see the pros and cons for in-housing. Also, it's very common for people to businesses and organizations to bring things internally when we're in a boom economy, which we still are. What tends to happen when markets slow down is that it's much more cost effective to be outsourcing, and again, that's where the PR agencies come in, really, I think. So I don't think you can have one or the other. It's a trend towards it at the moment, but I can see it going the other way at different points in the market.
Well, is it a problem for agencies right now with in-house and with companies poaching their people?
That's always a problem, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's always, that's the well-trodden path is, PR agency into in-house, into in-house client side. But I'm not hearing a ton of my PR agency clients saying we're losing business because they've hired 20 comms people and they no longer need us. So I think a lot of the in-housing is coming maybe more on the creative side of it, ad side of it, the sort of general sort of marketing side of it, less having huge comms teams and stuff like that. Because again, having having an external advisor, particularly at difficult points in the business cycle, is again, if you only have worked 20 years for that bank, how do you have a perception of how you're going to be viewed from the outside if you're not ever on the outside? Yeah, so.
And what are the biggest hiring challenges? We hear about diversity a lot.
Yes.
I wonder about ageism.
Yes.
I guess diversity encompasses it all.
Yeah.
What do you see as the biggest challenges? I mean, what's the hardest part of your job?
Well, that's 2 questions.
Yes, okay, you're right. I guess fulfilling, meeting the challenges.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think diversity, I mean, it's a huge passion and interest of my business is 70% diverse. So we hopefully practice what we preach. But I think it's, I'm having more and more conversations with people around diversity, and people saying, I only want to see an all women shortlist, or I only want, I want to see 50% diverse candidates, and I actively encourage it, and it's something that even if we don't get asked to do it, we do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And there's some wonderful organisations in the industry like Colourcom that are very, that are fantastic advocates for it. So and we're having the conversations, having more and more, like we're doing now, and as I said, with clients. But there's simply not. If we're talking gender, there's no issue with women entering the market, but of course there's a huge issue with promotion because they're not running the agency. So unlike technology businesses. It's not a pipeline problem. It's a promotion problem, I think. So, but we are seeing some, we're seeing some Gail at Weber and Barry at Ketchum and a lot of, Diana at MSL all, finally taking the top or nearing the top, which is great. And then, of course, women have flipped that by just starting their own agencies and being incredibly successful. So there's that way around it. There's still a massive problem with colour. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I think that has to start at the high school and university level, and making sure that PR is very front of mind for all people, and they see it's a career that pays well, can take them around the world, and is very fulfilling. So we're definitely having more and more conversations about it, but we can definitely be better at it as well, I think. So.
Which brings me to the second question that I asked you before. What's the hardest part of your job?
My clients. No.
Of course they are. That goes without saying, right?
No, it's my staff. No, I'm being really... no, it's hard. The hardest part is, I think it's... there's always it's the time constraints on searches. It's very rare that we enter a search where they're like, take your time. We've got 3 or 4 months to find someone. It's usually because on an agency side of it, it's often we've just won this client. It's all great news now. But we need to staff up 10 people. Can we hire yesterday? In-house front is normally because they're replacing someone, because the in-house teams are a bit more. There's less turnover in them, so it's often because people have moved on or moved out of the, around some other part of the business. So it's usually that sort of that level of urgency, and that kind of ties into why sometimes it's difficult to have diverse shortlists, because they're like, we would love to do that, but we don't have time to think about that sort of thing. Please just get us someone. So I think that's the hardest bit. But generally, it's working in communications is fantastic, because you meet bright, creative, interesting, progressive people. So it's the 95% of it's fantastic. So.
Well, that's a perfect note to end on, but I don't want to end until I ask you, what kind of crazy stuff have you seen? Like, what do people ask for that's just not obtainable? Or maybe you don't see it with your clients, but I mean...
Yeah.
Pie in the sky.
Well, I mean, I used to do a lot of work in... when I was in London, we used to service a lot of the Middle East, and some of the conversations we would have with some of the people there were outrageous, and not in a positive way. Okay. What they would tell us, and I think you could probably imagine, who we can't send them and stuff like that. So, yeah, we coming to the US, it's we've probably seen sort of less of that on that front. In the US, it's usually it's usually around salary levels and people having a little bit, an overinflated opinion of what they're due, and then it's often they've spoke to someone who spoke to someone and says they can get that sort of thing. So, but it's generally, again, PR people are they're in touch with markets and they're in touch with trends, and they have an understanding of it. So nothing too crazy compared to if you're in the sort of the Wild West that is Dubai and Abu Dhabi and stuff like that.
Right. So it's just managing expectations here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
All right. Well, it was a fun conversation.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you chatting with us.
Thank you.
And we will meet here again at some point.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Echo Chamber. Brought to you by The Holmes Report and produced by Marketeers. Sponsored by the Bullet Group, putting you in tomorrow's conversations today.